Our first bread recipe is for a sweet dough twist. The ingredients are 3/4 cup warm water, 3 tablespoons sugar, 1 package yeast, 2 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons instant milk, 2 tablespoons softened butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 egg beaten. The basic recipe is good for rolls, pretzel twists, and loaves. To begin, add 3/4 cup of warm water, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 package of yeast, and 2 tablespoons of dry milk. Stir these ingredients until blended. When the yeast is ready, it will begin to bubble, making a slight foam. This process is called proofing and will take about 5 minutes. This term will be used throughout the program. At this point, add 1 egg and beat well. Then mix in 2 tablespoons of softened butter. Once the butter is mixed well, add 1 teaspoon of salt, and then continue stirring. After these ingredients are blended, stir in 2 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. Blend the flour until all the moisture is absorbed. When the flour is blended into a nice firm dough, it is ready to knead. The first batch of dough will be made into a twist. Then, we'll show you how to form a pretzel. Lightly flour a pastry board. Place the dough on the board. And sprinkle it with flour. To knead, push in on the dough like this, then fold it over. Knead in and over until the dough is smooth and satiny. This will take 5 to 7 minutes. After the dough has reached this state, form it into a ball. Then butter a bowl thoroughly to prevent the dough from sticking to the edges. Roll the dough around in the bowl, coating it with butter. Place the dough in the bowl, cover it, and set it in a warm place for 1 to 1.5 hours, letting the dough rise. After the dough rises, it should be almost double in size. Begin the second part of this recipe by punching down the dough. Knead the dough again for 1 to 2 minutes. Then begin to twist it into a long sausage shape. Once the dough is about 16 inches long, twist it. And place it in a buttered bread pan. To give the bread an attractive appearance, brush vegetable oil on top. Then sprinkle it with poppy seeds. Cover the twist, set it in a warm place, and let it rise again for 45 minutes. After the second rise, bake the twist 25 minutes at 375 degrees. If you're making small rolls, reduce the cooking time by 10 minutes. In summary, when making a sweet dough twist, stir together water, sugar, yeast, salt, and dry milk. Let this set 5 minutes. Beat in egg. Add butter, salt, and stir. Stir in flour until moisture is absorbed. Knead the dough until smooth. Then place the dough in a buttered bowl. Cover and let rise for 1 1/2 hours. Punch dough down. Knead slightly, then form into a sausage. Twist the dough and place it in a buttered pan. Brush with oil and sprinkle with poppy seeds. Cover, then let rise for 45 minutes. Bake at 375 degrees for 25 minutes. A tempting breakfast bread is a sweet dough pretzel. In addition to the ingredients in the sweet dough twist, you will need 1/4 cup honey, 5 tablespoons sugar, 4 tablespoons butter, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon, and 1/4 cup of slivered almonds. Repeat the process in the twist recipe up to rolling the dough into a sausage shape. Instead, begin this spread by rolling the dough out on a floured pastry board. Roll the dough into a large rectangle. Then, take 3 tablespoons of softened butter and spread it evenly onto the rectangle. Next, combine 3 tablespoons of sugar with 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and sprinkle this over the dough. At this point, gently roll the dough up. Twist the roll slightly, then form the roll into a pretzel. Place the pretzel on a greased cookie sheet. Lightly brush the pretzel with vegetable oil. Set this in a warm place and let it rise again for 1 hour or until double in size. After the second rise, bake the pretzel at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. About 5 to 10 minutes before the bread is done, make the honey glaze. To do this, pour 1/4 cup of honey into a pan that is on medium heat. Then, add 2 tablespoons sugar, and 1 tablespoon of butter. Stir this continuously and bring the mixture to a boil and let it cook another minute. Then remove from the heat. When the pretzel is done, remove it from the oven, pour the glaze over it, and sprinkle with slivered almonds. In summary, repeat steps 1 through 9 of the sweet dough twist. Roll dough out into a large rectangle, lightly coat with butter, sprinkle with sugar and cinnamon, roll dough up and form into a pretzel. Place on an oiled cookie sheet, let rise again for 1 hour, bake at 350 degrees for 25 minutes, remove from the oven, brush with glaze, and sprinkle with almonds. For a basic whole wheat bread recipe, the ingredients for 2 loaves include 1 cup milk scalded, 1 tablespoon salt, 1/4 cup honey, 1/4 cup shortening, 1 cup lukewarm water, 2 packages of yeast, 3 cups whole wheat flour, and 3 cups of unbleached flour. Begin the bread by scalding 1 cup of milk. Stir the milk occasionally, making sure not to boil the milk. When it begins to bubble on the edge like this, remove it from the heat and pour it into a bowl. Now, add 1/4 cup of shortening, a 1/4 cup of honey, and 1 tablespoon of salt. Then stir these ingredients together. Next, add 1 cup of water and stir lightly. Then let the mixture sit until it is lukewarm. Continue by adding 2 packs of yeast and stirring well. Once the yeast has started to bubble or proof, like this, add 3 cups of whole wheat flour. Stir this in until the moisture is absorbed, then beat the mixture for about 2 minutes. Then add 3 cups of unbleached flour. Stir this into the dough until it starts to form a ball. At this stage, lightly flour a pastry board. And knead the dough until it is smooth and elastic. Now, this takes about 10 minutes. And remember to knead in and over. Then, form the dough into a ball and place it in a buttered bowl. Cover the dough and set it in a warm place to rise for an hour. After the dough has doubled in size, with your fist, punch the dough down, like this. Now, form the dough into a ball to knead a second time. Place the dough on a lightly floured pastry board. Knead the dough again for 2 to 3 minutes. Then, form the dough into a ball and cut it in half. This allows you to make 2 loaves. After the loaves have baked, freeze one for later. Place the dough in a buttered pan. Let it rise again for 45 minutes. Then bake at 375 degrees for 10 minutes. Reduce the heat to 350 degrees and bake for another 30 minutes. To review the basic whole wheat bread recipe, scald the milk, add shortening, honey, and salt, then stir. Add water and let mixture cool. Add the yeast and let it proof. Stir in whole wheat flour, then add unbleached flour. Knead the dough. Place in a buttered bowl, cover, and let rise 1 hour. Punch dough down, knead again, and form into loaf and place into buttered pan. Let rise again for 45 minutes. Bake for 10 minutes at 375 degrees, then reduce heat to 350 degrees for 30 minutes. For a bread that requires no kneading, try this dill bread. The ingredients for 1 loaf are 1 package active yeast, 1/4 cup warm water, 1 cup of small curd cottage cheese, 3 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of honey, a teaspoon of dried onion soup, 2 teaspoons of dill weed, a 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon salt, a beaten egg, and 2½ cups of flour. Begin by pouring 1/4 cup of warm water into a mixing bowl. To this, add 1 package of yeast. Stir slightly. Then let it sit until it begins to bubble or proof. While you're waiting on the yeast, into a saucepan, heat 1 cup of small curd cottage cheese. Add to this 2 tablespoons of honey, and a teaspoon of salt. Mix these ingredients together until they are lukewarm. Next, stir in 1 tablespoon of butter, a teaspoon of dried onion soup, and 2 teaspoons of dill weed. Now combine all of these ingredients thoroughly. Continue by adding 1 egg to the yeast mixture. Blend the egg well. Then add the cheese mixture. Now stir until all the ingredients are combined. To this, add 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder with 2½ cups of unbleached flour. Stir this in until the mixture starts to become doughy. Then cover the dough and let it rise for 1 hour in a warm place. After the dough is risen, spoon it into an 8-inch greased baking pan. You may want to use a round casserole dish or cake pan. After the dough has risen a second time, preheat the oven to 350 degrees and bake it for 40 to 50 minutes. The no-knead dill bread makes wonderful sandwiches. To review, proof the yeast. Heat the cottage cheese, honey, and salt. Stir in butter, dried onion soup, and dill weed. Add an egg to the yeast mixture. Add the cheese mixture. add the flour and stir until the mixture becomes doughy. Then, cover and let the dough rise. Spoon into a greased pan, cover and let rise again, and bake at 350 degrees in a preheated oven for 40 to 50 minutes. A hearty bread with soups and stews is crusty rye. To make one loaf, you need 1/4 cup packed brown sugar, a tablespoon of grated or minced orange peel, 1 cup of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of caraway seeds, 2 to 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of rye flour, and a package of yeast. Let's start this recipe by peeling the rind of half an orange. Then, with a knife, chop the rind so it is in fine pieces like this. Put the rind into a saucepan with 1 cup of water. To this, add 1/4 cup of lightly packed brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of caraway seeds. Stir this around, then bring it to a boil. Once this mixture starts to boil, transfer it into a mixing bowl. Let it cool until it is lukewarm, and after it's cooled, add 1 package of yeast. Stir the yeast in lightly so it will begin to dissolve. Let the yeast proof for approximately 5 minutes. After the yeast has proofed, add 1/2 cup of rye flour and stir this until it is well blended. At that time, add 2 1/2 cups of all-purpose white flour. Slowly stir this in and continue stirring until the mixture turns into a doughy ball. When the mixture gets to this stage, it's ready to knead. Lightly flour a pastry sheet or board. Place the dough on the board and sprinkle it with flour. Knead the dough until it becomes smooth. Then place it in a buttered bowl, cover it, and let it rise for 1 hour. Remember, knead in and over. You can tell this dough is fully risen if it keeps the indentation of your fingers like this. Punch the dough down. Then shape it into a ball. Place it on a greased cookie sheet and let it rise again for 45 minutes. After it is risen again, bake it in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. To summarize the crusty rye, peel, then mince orange rind. Bring orange rind, water, brown sugar, salt, and caraway seeds to a boil. Let it cool, then add the yeast. After yeast is proofed, add the flour. Stir until mixture becomes doughy, then knead the dough. Cover and let rise for 1 hour. Punch the dough down, form into a ball and placed on a greased cookie sheet. Let it rise again, and then bake at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. A nutritious dessert is this quick nut bread. The ingredients for 1 loaf are 2 1/2 cups of flour, 1 cup of sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of fresh ground nutmeg, 1 egg beaten, 1 cup of broken walnuts, and a cup of milk. Start this recipe with the dry ingredients. To a mixing bowl, add 2 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour. Then add 1 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Mix all of these ingredients until they are thoroughly combined. In a separate bowl, add together 1 egg and a cup of milk. Blend this well. Then, pour the milk and egg into the dry mixture. Stir this until all the moisture is absorbed. At this point, add 1 cup of walnut meats. Mix these in so they are evenly distributed throughout the dough. The last step before baking is to pour the mixture into a greased and floured bread pan. Place the bread in the oven for 1 hour at 350 degrees. To review the quick nut bread, mix together flour, sugar, salt, baking powder, and nutmeg. In a separate bowl, mix the egg and milk. Add liquid mixture to dry ingredients, mix in walnut meats, pour into a greased, floured bread pan, and bake at 350 degrees for 1 hour.